Evaluating Iran's attack on Israel. Questionable motive. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and Iran's proxy groups in Yemen, Lebanon, and Iraq attacked the Israeli homeland on April 13, 2024, with 300 drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles in an operation codenamed True Promise. The attack is a response to Israel's airstrike against the Iranian consulate in Damascus that killed 13, including 2 Iranian generals, on April 1st. The Iranian attack was the first time that Iran had directly attacked Israel, and it largely failed as Israel, United States, Jordan, and the United Kingdom combined to repel the assault and shoot down nearly all incoming missiles. The attack has put the region on edge as there are concerns that Israel will retaliate, and this will lead to an escalatory cycle of counterattack between Iran and Israel. This concern is leading the international community to ask Israel not to respond to the failed Iranian attack. The open question being debated over the international call for Israel to stand down is based on the true intent of the Iranian attack. After April the 1st attack, the Iranian government announced that they would respond to the Israeli attack at a time of their choosing. Iran warned the United States to stand aside and not to protect Israel. The date of Iran's attack was April 13th, but the slow-moving attack was detected late on April 12th. The Iranian attack used 170 drones, 30 cruise missiles, and 120 ballistic missiles. As has been widely reported, the international response to the Iranian attack was vigorous and resulted in an estimated shooting down of 99% of the incoming missiles and drones based on Western sources. Only minor damage was reported to some Israeli installations, and one Bedouin girl was injured by shrapnel from an intercepted missile. It has been concluded that the attack was a failure, though Iran stated that it was a success. Iran has also stated to Western envoys and to the international audience that Iran's attack was concluded and with no follow-on attacks. However, Iran warned Israel that it would respond more forcefully if Israel chose to respond to the attack. Israel, for its part, has said that it would respond to the attack, but has not provided any details, though it appears that Israel is yet to decide how to respond. The international community has called on Israel not to respond and not risk a regional war. Much of the international community, including UN Secretary General and China, conclude that the attack on Israel was a response to the Israeli controversial action of December 1st in Damascus. So at this point, the attack and this Iranian response should close the matter and not further risk war. This point of view is shared by President Joe Biden, who has publicly told Israel and released details of his calls with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after the Iranian attack. Biden told the Israeli leader that the U.S. would not participate in or support any Israeli attack on Iran in response to this attack. It is true that the counter-response by each nation would seem to be a point that the international community is correct to call for the end of the attacks. However, this does not address the escalatory nature of the Iran decision to directly attack the other's home territory. Iran and Israel have used espionage against each other and have attacked each other through proxies or outside of each other's home territory. It is also true that the attack on a diplomatic compound is escalatory in itself, but Iran has not shown a particular view of the sanctity of embassies in the past. So the attack to directly attack the Israeli homeland was a one-up response to the Israeli attack in Damascus, and would seem to indicate that Israel must respond to the attack on its homeland with an attack of its own on Iranian homeland. This is the concern that the international community has, because they would expect that Iran would counter-respond to the Israeli attack, and the cycle of response-counter-response will spin out of control. It also does appear that Iran, despite attacking the Israeli homeland, does not want the war to escalate. Iran uses bravado and escalatory language, but also gave indications that it would act not necessarily to start a war with Israel. Reasons for the decision to attack at all was that Iran needed to telegraph to its proxies and its supporters that Iran was not above getting involved in the fight with Israel. The Ayatollahs who lead Iran would lose face if they were asking others to stand up and die in a struggle against Israel, while at the same time was attempting to save itself from getting bloodied in the same struggle. So the need to respond was part of keeping their proxies loyal to Iranian leadership and to satisfy their own hardliners at home. The U.S., its allies, including Israel, had time to move air assets into the region, move a United States Marine Corps MEF aboard the USS Bataan and its 2 destroyer escorts to the eastern Mediterranean. The USS Eisenhower carrier battle group was positioned in the Red Sea, which is the most advantageous position to interpose between the Houthis' proxy attacks and southern Israel. But the battle group would be out of position to effectively counter the most likely proxy threat of Hezbollah attacking northern Israel. Israel also had time to cancel all its military leaves, which it had started canceling shortly after the April 1st attack in Damascus. And they were fully ready for the attack, which included having their Iron Dome and Arrow 3 anti-ballistic missile batteries placed on full alert. President Biden left his Delaware beach vacation and returned to Washington to meet with his military and national security team on Saturday the 12th due to what was regarded as an indication that the Iranians were going to imminently attack. The attack was launched on Saturday evening and early Sunday morning, but was launched in such a way that Israel and the allies knew hours beforehand that the attack was coming. The Iranians made no attempt to use surprise, which would be hard to accomplish anyway with all the detection assets available to the U.S. and Israel. But more surprisingly, no attempt was made to coordinate the attack to be a time-on-target attack where all munitions arrived nearly simultaneously. This would have been the most ideal way to overwhelm anti-missile defenses that were in place. Instead, the attack was conducted in waves and gave the coalition the best chance to defeat the attack in detail, with defensive weapons, which they were able to do by shooting down nearly all 300 drones and missiles. Finally, it appears that the attack was mostly aimed at southern Israel and the sparsely populated Negev desert. If the attack was meant to destroy infrastructure or kill civilians in the Negev desert, is not the ideal target. This is a place to attack if an opponent wanted to reduce the risk of creating civilian casualties. High casualties would have guaranteed a response from Israel against the Iranian homeland. The Iranian attack appears to have been symbolic in nature and one that was never meant to inflict serious damage or casualties to Israel. It was telegraphed beforehand in the press, launched in a slow motion, allowing the coalition to be in place, and arrived in waves and targets that would have been in the Negev desert. All the Air Force's naval aviation were deployed and ready to, including the USS Eisenhower Battle Group, in the right position to have the maximum effect, where it would have had almost no effect against Hezbollah if it attacked. Iran was able to claim the attack was a success because it was launched at Israel directly. The U.S. and its allies claimed they protected Israel by nullifying the Iranian attack with no fatalities and a few injuries. The U.S. and the international community accepted Iran's word that the follow-up attacks would occur, so the U.S. could immediately pressure Israel not to respond. This was the attempt by Iran and the U.S. to defuse the situation and avoid a war, and Biden could return to his beach vacation in Delaware on Sunday, which he did. The administration was not concerned this incident was an ongoing crisis, and nor was Iran. The only wild card is Israel's response. The War Cabinet in Israel has indicated that Israel will respond to the attack, but has not given any indication what the attack would be, except that it would be directed against the homeland of Iran. The apparent defensive victory by Israel and the coalition was not enough for Israel, which seems committed to the respond in some way, whether through a military assault or a cyber attack. President Biden, UN Secretary General, Pope Francis, and other Western leaders have all condemned the Iranian attack, but more specifically asked Israel not to attack and to end the spiral of violence. The attack on Israel by Iran did not appear to have an attack to continue the war, but was a symbolic gesture, a gesture that Iran telegraphed to the U.S. and its allies, despite its escalatory statements during the attack, with targets largely uninhabited parts of Israel, that also telegraphed beforehand. The attack was delivered in such a way to maximize the defensive efforts of the coalition. Iran wanted a symbolic response for its standing with the hardliners and proxies, but also wanted a way out of the war that would endanger the position of the Ayatollahs at home and abroad. If Israel decides not to respond to this symbolic attack, the crisis ends. But if Israel responds to this symbolic attack with their own attack, with its own symbology, then there will be a likelihood that the crisis will become more acute and the risk of regional war increases.